What is going on, everybody? It is me, your favorite cross country walking guy. At least I hope I am. Again, if I'm not, we're going to have some problems. Uh, Coming to you live from this cozy Airbnb here in Glenville, West Virginia. Um, as you can see, I am rocking a nice new embroidered polo shirt. I want to give a huge shout out to the Happy Tiger Company in Kettering, Ohio, for the awesome work on the embroidery on these shirts. We've got these because we are hoping, as this walk picks back up, to try to get into some schools or wherever we can and do some public speaking, talking about mental health, talking about the first walk, talking about this walk, talking about overcoming adversity, whatever we got to do. So I figured I should probably look a little bit more professional rather than going in with sweaty neon t-shirts. Uh, but I know it has been a long time since we've done one of these shows. Obviously, if you follow along on any of the social media, you guys know that we've had some things that have gone on in the family, and we'll get to that. But first, as always, I want to say thank you to everybody that follows along on all forms of social media. Everyone that has chipped in the positive words, the great messages, transporting my cart, giving me a place to stay, like all of that stuff is tantamount to being able to finish this walk. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and hop right into this. Hello, Mom, my only current viewer. We'll start right back up. Last time you guys saw me, we had just finished up with the Kentucky section of the walk, and we're preparing to head into West Virginia. I left the Ashland, Kentucky area and began my walk in towards Charleston, West Virginia. We had reached out to Kayla Young, a delegate in West Virginia, to try to get a chance to meet up with her and talk about the things that she's done for mental health in the state. We kind of whiffed, but I mean, we're still 2 out of 3. So if we were playing Major League Baseball, I'm still in the Hall of Fame. So we'll take the losses with the wins. The first day leaving Ashland, man, it was hot. Um, I want to say it was about a 15 to 20 mile day. I went from Ashland, Kentucky to Huntington, West Virginia. One of the fire stations there in Huntington gave me a place to crash for the night, which is always better than trespassing. Um, it was just, I mean, it wasn't an overly long day. Just hot. I mean, it's summertime, and I'm a chubby guy, so you're gonna have that. Um, but saw some cool sights along the way. Catlettsburg was a really nice, river town. It was like the last town in Kentucky that I had before I crossed over the river. And as soon as I got into West Virginia, first time on either walk, I got my first bee sting, and that bee is lucky that it flew away because I was going to punch it square in its bee face. Just pushing the cart along, and I felt something land on my hand. And by the time I looked down, he'd already stung me and was long gone. But I got the last laugh because I know he's dead. Um, I stopped at a little hot dog place in Canova, West Virginia. Kind of rested up a little bit, tried to get some calories in, as that's been a struggle for me. I know it's hard to believe that the 350-pound man could struggle to uh, put calories in his body, but it's a little bit different when you're out walking all day. I mean, anybody that's worked outside, especially when it's hot, I will tell you, it's actually kind of tough to put calories in your body because you want to get done with what you got to do and be done for the day and just relax. Um, Stopped there, kept going, got to the guys at the Huntington station. Really cool guys. They were cooking dinner. They had chicken parm that night. And anytime on this walk that I get a chance to sit down with people, especially, but to have a home cooked meal, I'm all in on that. So yeah, we sat down. It was really good chicken parm. But again, I like all foods. We talked, and at every fire station I go to, I always kind of run the joke of how I enjoy the show Chicago Fire. I got into it, a month or two before the walk left, and it was one of those shows that like it kept showing up on my TikTok on my For You page, like clips of it, and I was like, fine, I'll give the show a try. So I popped it on, and it became one of those things that I kept watching and watching and watching. So I binged all, uh, 12 seasons from like a couple of months before the walk to, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe when I was home, last time I was home. So yeah, about a week and a half ago, I actually finished up and caught all the seasons up. So I'm all caught up on Chicago Fire. Hey, what's up, Daniel? How's it going, man? Um, but yeah, we got in there, and I always kind of shoot the bull with the firefighters and pretend like I know what they're doing. I'm like, oh, guys, I know what you guys are doing because I've seen Chicago Fire, so I know exactly what being a firefighter is like. And the amount of eye rolls that I get from literally every single firefighter when I do that, it's like a running joke for me now. So I'm literally just going to do this for the next however long this walk lasts. They were really awesome though. They gave me they had a spare bunk. Let me get a shower, which again, I am a large, sweaty man. So anytime I get a shower, it is a win for me. And got up the next day. First stop of the day that next day was up to the up in a cemetery. I went to visit the Marshall Memorial. I knew I was in Huntington, and it just kind of dawned on me that I was right there. So I climbed. It was probably like 100 foot up a path, pushing my cart all the way up to get up to where it sat in the cemetery. It was a beautiful cemetery, like rolling hills. It was nice. The memorial was really kind of somber. Having seen the movie and understanding the loss of life that occurred, and kind of paying my respects to everybody. I left from there, and that day I headed to Barbersville, West Virginia. Uh, this was where it was like time for another hiccup to get thrown my way, and I was probably about halfway through the day, I'd say, 8 or 9 miles into the day, and I just happened to look down, and I saw that my front tire was flat. So I pulled my phone up real quick and saw that there was like a Napa store up the road. So I grabbed some like Fix a Flat and got in there. Tried to fill the tire up. It looked like it was going to work, so I had my hopes up, and I probably didn't make it like 200 feet down the road, and tire was flat again. So I had to push, probably like the final 6 or 7 miles that day on a flat front tire, which when you're already pushing 130 pounds worth of gear is a pain. But earlier that day, I was getting ready to leave Huntington, and this was kind of a hilarious thing, especially if anybody had seen me. I almost wish like this aspect of it had gone viral because it would have been hilarious to see. But I stopped at a gas station, and there was one hill, I don't know, like 75 foot of climb, like wasn't a major hill, but I was, kind of tired or whatever. So I stopped at this gas station, grab a couple Gatorades, sit down for a sec, and I got right to the bottom of this hill afterwards, and I look, and like in the middle of the road, there is like a 4 by 6 foot sheet of plywood in the middle of the road, and like, I don't know, 6 or 7 2 by 4s, probably 8 to 10 feet long. And there are people like swerving around it, running over it. So like I parked the cart off in the grass, like right by a McDonald's, and I just walk out in the middle of the road when it's got kind of a slower spot in the traffic, and I just start chucking stuff. And naturally, I'm not aiming any of this, but every single 2 by 4 bounces off my cart, which was absolutely perfect. It was exactly how I planned it. And then after I got all the 2 by 4s off the road, like I grabbed the plywood and drug it off to the side. And hopefully the people that mow the lawn at that McDonald's didn't mind having to clean up all the 2 by 4s and the plywood. Um, but I got into Barbersville. I got to a hotel room, and I had to try to figure out some things because his front tire was flat. And the bad thing about the cart I'm using is that pretty much everything is like designed specifically for that cart uh, through the manufacturer. So I looked around and tried to find like a suitable replacement 10-inch wheel. And I went to like a hardware store and found this like thick, like all rubber, like 10 pound, 10-inch round wheel. But I didn't have any like axle bolt or anything to put it on the cart. Um, so I just left it at the hotel. Luckily, Chris Miller, a gentleman who lives in Enid, I actually coached his son in Pee Wee football for a year. He reached out. His uncle lived in Chesapeake, Ohio, which is kind of right over the water from where I was at, and he offered to transport my cart when I left Barbersville to go from Barbersville to Cross Lanes, West Virginia. Um, and that was the point where my mom was going to pick me up because I'd set up a surprise for my cousin who had a show the weekend of June 28th. So he offered to pick the cart up, take it to the hotel, the Sleep Inn and Suites. I believe they gave us a really super big discount on a room. I think they gave us the employee rate, so it was like $40. Real nice hotel, like up on a tall hill and everything. Um, but so he comes picks the car up. I had a couple of great meals. There was an amazing Mexican restaurant that had a bunch of these like luchador statues in it, which were really pretty cool. But that next day, like I strapped on my day pack and I had a 28-mile walk from Barbersville to Cross Lanes, West Virginia. And I mean, it wasn't super hilly, which was nice. Rolling hills, but there weren't a lot of like real big climbs or anything like that because most of that's right along the river, so you don't see a lot of elevation change. Uh, I met up with my mom about 14 miles in. She had some trouble with directions, trying to find the gas station I was at. I explained to her where we were going or where I was going to go for the night. She was going to stay there. And then the next morning, I would finish the 12-mile or so walk to the actual Capitol building. And then we'd pack up and head home for a few days so I could surprise my cousin at a show. And so she stops, like I'm having lunch, a very overpriced gas station lunch. And I switch my socks out because on a 28-mile day when it's fairly warm out, you got to keep your feet dry to keep the blisters from coming back. Because at this point, I had done really well on keeping blisters away. I don't know if it was just the fact that my feet had become calloused or what, but blisters were at this point were not an issue anymore. So I finished the last 14 miles, and they eventually start dragging on. There are pros and cons to using the cart and not using the cart. When you're not using the cart, I'm not pushing 130 extra pounds so I can move a little bit faster. Downside is I don't have my camping chair to pull out and sit down when my feet hurt. So the last probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles were tough. My feet were swollen, they were hurting. The usual aches and pains in the hips and everything were severely exacerbated. I stopped at a BP again, probably 5, 6 miles out, grabbed some more Gatorades, and there were a few like Jehovah's Witnesses there. They start talking to me and asking what was going on, and they didn't actually for this like first time I've ever come across Jehovah's Witnesses that didn't immediately go into the religious pitch, which I thought was actually pretty cool of them. They asked what somehow it got onto what I was doing, and I explained it to them, and they were like, "You're walking across the country," and I was like, "Well, very slowly, but that's the plan." I gave them one of my cards, and they snapped a picture. So I was a celebrity for 5.5 seconds. Uh, then I'm communicating with my mom, and this was I feel sorry for her. She was struggling. I told her where we were going to meet, where the hotel was, and because the hotel is like up this mountain, and I mean it was like 450 feet of elevation gain. I mean it was like 45 degrees. Like even without the cart, I probably would have just gotten about halfway up and then just thrown myself down the side of the mountain. It'll just log rolled down and just started hitting all the trees as I went. But I was like, hey, meet me at this intersection. And she was having trouble understanding which intersection, and she plugged it into GPS, and she was getting lost and getting really frustrated. Eventually, we got it all ironed out, though. She found the correct intersection, and I got to that intersection, and that's where she picked me up, and we went up the hill to the hotel. The only reason I took the ride up is because it was actually the opposite direction. I wasn't utilizing a vehicle to get closer to my goal, so it doesn't violate my no ride rule. Um, but we had dinner that night, got up the next morning. Uh, Man, and it was only a 12-mile walk, which a lot of people are like, man, 12 miles is a lot. When you're doing what I'm doing, 12 miles it isn't usually a big day. We had loaded the cart into mom's car. She almost lost a finger. It got pinched underneath the cart in her car. Apparently, it's still kind of screwed up. And my mom, like every other member of our family, is very bad at going to hospitals or doctors. But we get that all loaded up. I just keep I don't even think I went with a day pack this time. I just had my wallet, and the guy had a couple a couple waters, a couple Gatorades in my hand, because I was like, it's only 12 miles. It ain't gonna be that bad. After 28 miles the day before, it was rough. Um, walking through downtown Charleston, it was a pretty nice place. You know, obviously you have your homeless. You have any bigger size city, you're going to have a homeless population. None of them really, kind of came up to me or anything, and nobody really, pressed me. Took a little break in some shade by the sheriff's office. Finished going to the courthouse, and like on one side of the river there, like if you look up, there are all these like amazing like mansions and stuff. And I was like walking up, and there was a woman coming by, and I go, "Excuse me, ma'am." And she was like, "Huh?" And I was like, "Very touristy, dumb question." I was like, "Do you have any idea who owns all these homes up here? Because they're beautiful." And she's like, "No." She's like, "But they really look cool when you see them when you come in on the highway," which I think was like 64. Um, but yeah, so I got my picture in front of the Capitol building. Mom swung around the corner, picked me up, and we headed home. Um, like I said, my cousin had a show, and I knew that this was going to be the closest I was going to be to even have a chance to come back for one of his shows and support him. So I had reached out to his best friend Justin, one of his former coworkers, and his friend Matt, and his girlfriend Sarah, and I was like, let's put something together to really surprise him. And we had kicked around ideas of like wait until everything was set up and cueing some music, probably Hulk Hogan's music. Despite all of the bad things that have come out about Hulk Hogan, when I was a child, that man was my hero. So it's hard for me to separate that. And the music is still iconic to me. But we were going to cue the music, and I was either going to pop through the curtain or pop through the door and surprise him. But it got closer to his show, and I was like, I didn't really want to make his show weekend about me, about me surprising him. So I knew he was setting up Friday night because I've helped him set up quite a bit. So I took Mom's car out because I don't have a car anymore. For those of you that don't know, I did sell my car to help fund the Joe's Bills portion of the walk. Um, so I took my mom's car, like I backed it into a section of the parking lot where I didn't think he'd see me, and he pulls in with the moving van with all his gear in it, and kind of backs in, and he gets out. And if you have a child that's listening to this, please put their earmuffs on. I try to keep everything PG, but there are a few instances where I have to kind of let the curse words go. So I see my cousin get out, and I hop out of the car, and I was like, "Hey!" And he looked over at me. I was like, "You look like you could use some fucking help." And he looked at me, and he kind of looked, and he double taked because I looked like from a distance his friend Nick, the guy who opened for him, our friend Nick. It's not just my cousin's friend Nick. He thought I was Nick, and he looked, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" And I was like, "Hey, man," I was like, "I'm here to surprise you." I was like, I was like, "I'm here." I told him about the plan, and he was like, "Oh, you should have gone through with the original plan." And I was like, "No, no, no." I was like, "I'm not making your show weekend or your show night about me." I was like, "I'll surprise you now and help you set up and everything, help you tear down, and when we'll go from there." So, um, yeah, it was an awesome show, and I got to share this. My cousin, his cross media shows are awesome. Um, he and somebody else will play a few sets, and they always open for a movie. This time it was Jaws, and so my cousin had this inflatable, one of those inflatable shark suits, and he had somebody in it, and they always do photos, and they do photos usually for fundraisers like the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. This time, though, since my cousin had some heart issues and some medical bills, all the proceeds from the pictures went to help him cover the medical bills. So, my cousin, our friend Norm, if you've watched any of the podcasts, Norm was the very first person that I interviewed to kind of kick all of this off, to talk about overcoming his addictions. So it was my cousin, Norm, myself, Matt, and Nick, and we all took this picture with Bruce the Shark, which I thought was hilarious. Yes, that is also a small, squeaky, inflatable shark taped to my head. Um, but that group of guys years ago, when I was training to try to be an independent professional wrestler, try to check one of those things off my bucket list before I allowed work to take over my entire life and sap all of the joy that I had. Um, we would always go to indie shows around here, and my trainers would always call me a mark because I would go watch shows that I was planning on working at some point. But those guys, we always, they called us the Click. We did, and we just had a blast. Great group of guys to hang out with. Um, so my cousin's show goes on. We end up seeing the bike riders that weekend, both of us being motorcycle riders, and it having a basis of a motorcycle gang that is somewhat connected to the Dayton, Ohio area. It was kind of a cool movie. Also visited with my dad. He did start getting sick again, so uh, he actually checked himself into the hospital, I believe, this time. I don't think we took him by squad. Uh, I said, got ready to. We wrapped up that weekend. I talked to him. I was like, getting ready to hit the road. I was like, you better be back here. You better be here when I get back. And he's like, I'll do my best. So I get back. Um, my mom and I, we get in the car. We stopped in Point Pleasant at one point, and I thought I had a picture. You'll have to go to Facebook. I did take a picture of the Mothman's butt crack because there was a quarter stuck in it, and I thought it was hilarious. I thought I had it loaded up here for the show, as I'm still trying to get used to using StreamYard to upload photos to help out with the podcast. I'm trying to experiment with the functions of everything, but we get back everything loaded. I've also attached. At this point, I had attached signage to the cart. And again, if you've seen this on any of the social medias, you've seen it. For somebody that's not handy at all, even though I've done concrete work and construction work, I'm not handy. If you point and say, "Hey, do this," I will do it. But I don't build things. But I went ahead and I grabbed some PVC pipe, took some measurements, got some cuts, had banners printed, and now they're attached to the cart. So I look significantly less homeless when I'm going through these bigger cities and we're trying to get conversations going and we're trying to get in and talk to businesses about sponsoring us to help out with funding. It makes us look a little bit more official. So we had all that stuff loaded back up in the car. Mom drops me back off in Charleston, and I went from Charleston. The first night when I got back, I went to there was a church there in Charleston that does like an outreach program, which was really awesome. It's like an outreach for the homeless, for people with addiction, trying to overcome addiction, and there are a lot of members of First Choice Services who do peer recovery. I guess you could sort of say it's kind of like being a sponsor. Um, but people that have successfully overcome their addictions try to help other people out. First Choice Services also operates the 988 helpline for most of the country. Which is, that's another thing that is obviously very close to our hearts here with all across the country. I stopped there with them and visited for a few hours, met with a bunch of really amazing people, people that have had their struggles, but they've come back around and now they're trying to help other people out. And I think ultimately isn't that what we're all trying to do? That's why I try to be open about, my mental health, my struggles, the two times that I did try to take my own life. I think we have to share our stories because we don't know when sharing our story of overcoming whatever was thrown at us in life could impact somebody else. And I will continue to do that until I am completely out of money. And then when I'm completely out of money, once my body has become so emaciated that I can't push that cart and walk anymore, then we'll figure it out. Luckily, as big as I am, I could probably finish the entire walk without that happening. But after the time spent with First Choice Services and at the Bream, the church there, I only went about 4.5 miles, 4.5 5 miles. There was a sleep in there just north of Charleston, just because I knew I was getting there late in the day, wasn't going to be able to make a lot of miles. So we got another hotel room. The next morning, I headed. It was about 19 miles, 19 rolling, hilly, no shoulder on the road miles to a little town called Clendenin, West Virginia. And let me tell you something about Clendenin and I didn't realize this until I got into town for a while. Um, but in 2016, this town was absolutely ravaged by flooding. Uh, like most of the buildings were almost all the way underwater, all the ones that were near the river. And like, I looked at the pictures, you can look them up and check them out. The amount of flooding for this little town of 800 people to experience and still overcome was unbelievable. The way they have bounced back is insane. But I reached out to a brewery that apparently had an Airbnb above it. Shout out to Evan and Becky with the Clendenin Brewing Company. The first night they donated a room, which was awesome. They had a threat of storms for a couple of days. And again, because I am pushing a 130-pound lightning rod, I try to minimize the amount of time I spend in thunderstorms. So they gave me a very nice discount off what the Airbnb normal rate would be to hang out there a couple of days. And I got to sample, food from a couple places in Clendenin. Paddlers, you walk in and it seems like your everyday little like bar, like your neighborhood bar. Man, the food was so good. And then there was the Elk River Baking Company. They had fresh donuts, and their deep fryer was down, so they started making them in a cast iron skillet. And they're some of the best donuts I've ever seen. But all the people in that town were just super nice, just phenomenal. 4th of July rolls around, like the storms have moved out, so I'm getting ready to hit the road. So, I say my goodbyes to Becky and Evan, and I get the cart and I start pushing up 119, heading up towards Spencer and whatnot. And I'm starting to go down the road, and I see this like pit mix, and he starts kind of running where she starts kind of walking with me, and she got a collar on but no tags. So I was hoping that nobody had like dropped her off, but she was super friendly. She'd come up, I would pet her, then she'd go frolic in the weeds and whatnot. But I got about 2 miles up the road, and I feel the wheels start to wobble, and one of my wheels, the axle bolt, shears completely off. And I mean, you can see like how clean that snap is right there. That was actually a custom made axle bolt. The wheel that broke was one of the two wheels that cost me $300 in Columbus, Indiana, the first time that my wheel got bent and we had this issue. I had to have these two custom built axle bolts because the wheels they ordered were for a trike, because my wheels are specific to the cart. And these were supposed to be stronger wheels because they had 38 spokes instead of 20. So I sat there, and luckily I still kept the original wheel that I had with the airless foam tube inside of it. It took me about 20 minutes to pull the axle bolt from inside the cart where it sheared off, because there wasn't a whole lot to grab. And I just sat there and was just so I was so frustrated, guys. I was so down. I'd started that morning with like an hour's worth of like a quick shower, not really a thunderstorm, just pretty heavy rain. So it slowed down my start. And then, I'm 2 miles up the road and this happens. And I'm just sitting there just like ready to flip the cart over and like crawl into the fetal position and cry. But right across the road, like if you look right up there behind where the house is up there in the car, there's a gentleman that comes out. His name was Tyler, and Tyler stopped, and we he asked, he's like, "Are you the guy walking across walking across West Virginia, walking across the country?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "I've seen you on Facebook," and I was like, "Yeah, that's me." It's like, right now I'm trying not to bang my head against the ground. Uh, so at this point, like, I'm kind of mentally defeated. He's got a truck. We load the cart into the truck. We go back to the brewery. We're driving back, and Tyler was like, "Hey," he's like, "My family and friends are having a 4th of July gathering tonight and to watch some fireworks. He's like, would you want to come?" And again, on this trip, there are a few things that will almost automatically make me say yes. One of those is actual conversation with people. Uh, you know, podcasts, audiobooks, and music can only go so far. And then they're grilling out. And, it's just your normal 4th of July party fare, like hot dogs, hamburgers, stuff like that. Again, that's home cooked. That's real food, That's food I enjoy. So he offered. I'm like, absolutely. I was like, you just send me a message, let me know, I'll come down. So we get back to the brewery. Again, they give me a fairly nice discounted rate on the room, the same room I was in. I go down, I go to Tyler's, and y'all in West Virginia, you're keeping this from people, and I don't like it. And it's gonna sound nasty to some of yous, but I get to his house, and they get all the food cooked, and they're like, you got to try a West Virginia dog, and I was like, what is a West Virginia dog? So apparently, it is a chili dog with uh, onions and coleslaw. And I'm not a big coleslaw guy. I'll have a little bit every now and then, especially with barbecue or whatever. But I was like, man, like coleslaw on a chili dog? Ugh. Let me tell you, I tried it. It was delicious. I had like three of them. And I sat there and I told them, I was like, you guys, I was like, I wanted to hate this because it just sounds awful. It sounds like something that should not exist. And the fact that it does exist frightens me, but it was delicious. But I sat there and, I visited with Tyler and, his friends and his family that were there and his now fiance. Congratulations, Tyler and Abby. They got engaged not too long ago. Um, but we wrap up there and it's getting closer to fireworks time. And like, I'm sitting there and I'm kind of like nodding off, like not nodding off, but I'm just like, and Tyler's, he's talking about how he's tired. And he was like, hey, do you still want to go see the fireworks? And I was like, do you want to go see the fireworks? I was like, because you drove. So if you want to see the fireworks, we're seeing fireworks. But if you don't want to see fireworks, I'm okay if you take me back. So he's like, yeah, I'm kind of tired. So we skipped on the fireworks. I had an amazing time talking to everybody. Everybody asking about the walk and the first walk and things like that. And go back to the brewery, and it was another day where more storms were supposed to be coming through on the 5th and 6th. So I wait a couple of nights, and then on the 6th, my sister sends me a message and says, Dad is going into hospice care. And we knew that I had a sneaking suspicion going into this that there was a high probability that my father wasn't going to make it through the walk. For those of you that don't know, his health issues really started on the first walk. So we'll dial it. We'll go back in time. We'll get in the DeLorean, hit 88 miles an hour real quick. So in middle of June, when I'm coming through Ohio on the first walk across the country, my mom sends me a message, and she's like, "Yeah, I just left your dad's." She's like, "He's acting real weird." I was like, "I think he might have had a stroke." And I told her, I was like, "You're an EMT. Why aren't you? Why didn't you call the squad?" And she said, "Well, I'm going back later. If he's not any better, I'll call the squad or take him myself." I wasn't going to take the chance, so I'm 45 miles away in the middle of nowhere, BFE, Ohio. I call the squad. They get him into the hospital that night. His white blood cell count was like super elevated. I'm talking like 25,000, like three or four times what it should be. He was delirious. I got to the fire station I was staying at that night in South Vienna, outside South Vienna, and my sister and mom had gone to the hospital with him, and my sister FaceTimed me with my dad on the phone, and she was like, "Do you know who that is?" And his eyes were it was like he could see me, and he knew who I was, but he couldn't speak. He couldn't articulate who I was, and it was scary. It was so scary, to the point that I just hung up on it and I started bawling at the fire station parking lot where I was sitting on this bench. They eventually pumped him full of antibiotics. They get the infection cleared, so we think everything's good. Well, 2 or 3 months consecutive, almost to the month, to the day of each month, these infections come back, and it's the same thing. He goes to Soin Hospital. They never find the source of the infection. They just give him antibiotics, send him on his way. The walk ends, and my sister gets her master's, and he's at the graduation, and he's doing well. He's healthy. Everything seems to be going well. Last April, he starts being unable to eat. The infections start coming back. There were instances where, my mom and I hadn't heard from him, so we'd go to the apartment, check on him, and he would have the tables flipped over. At one time, the bedroom window he had, all the glass was broken, but it was broken in. So it looked like somebody tried to break into the house, but it was him breaking the glass inwards. Blood on the wall, blood on his bed. It looked like somebody came in and tried to murder him. But it was the same thing. They keep finding the more infections just started coming back. The later ones turned out to be urinary tract infections. But this time in April, he'd been in the hospital for almost 3 weeks, and the doctors can't figure out why the infections are there, why they keep coming back. So eventually they do a CT scan with contrast, and they find that he has a hole in his esophagus. It was like mid to late April, and we're all in there with him, and the resident or the doctor that was on call in the ER or wherever he was at, ICU, whatever. We're all in there, my mom, my sister, and I, and he goes, real amazing bedside manner with this one. He's like, well, you got two options. He's like, we can call hospice in, we can keep you comfortable, but you'll have to understand that this will be the thing that kills you. Thanks. And he's like, or, we can get your gastroenterologist, and they can do like a quicker, or not a quicker, but a more intense, like surgical approach to try to help you recover. And at this point, it had been like, I want to say like 14 to 17 days, and he hadn't been able to drink anything and they were doing fluids and food through the NG tube, I think, through his nose or whatever. So he thinks he's dehydrated because his mouth is always dry, and he was miserable. And we're all sitting there, and we all told each other, like, if he picks hospice, we're fine with it. We understand it. He tells the doctor, he was like, and in classic Clarence Hall fashion, he's like, well, I ain't quitting nothing in my life. I ain't quitting now. So my mom and my sister walk out of the hospital, and I was the last one in there, and I walked up to him and I said, I want you to know, I've never been more proud of you than I am right now for fighting. And I hugged him, and I went out, and I sat out in the car that day, and it was a beautiful April day, sunny. Just wind was blowing. It was just a nice day, beautiful day. And that was when this walk became a thing. Because when I originally finished the first walk, there was no desire to do another walk. My feet were very mad at me. But so my dad gets a stent put in. A few months after the stent's put in, his esophagus closes almost all the way, from scar tissue from the surgery to put the stent in. So they have to put in a feeding tube, and the goal was to put a bunch of weight on him, or enough weight that he would be at least considered healthy, and then they could put a balloon down in his esophagus, stretch it out so he could start eating again. Dad never got to that point. So when I heard that, like on July, my sister messaged me on like July 6th, I believe. That as soon as we were talking, I got in. I booked an Amtrak. I even booked a Greyhound until I realized that the Greyhound and the Amtrak stations in Cincinnati were nowhere near each other. So I took the Amtrak train from Charleston back home. Kelly picked me up super early in the morning, like 1 o'clock in the morning, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on July 8th. Hospice, and the doctors had told my mom and sister, like, he's got about 4 to 6 weeks to live. 4 is probably more likely. So, I was going to come home and spend the last 4 weeks of my dad's life with him. They brought him home at noon on the 8th, and by about 11:15 a.m. on July 9th, Clarence Hall had passed away, my dad. It sucked. I'm glad he's not suffering anymore. And I know he hung on. I know that he hung on to like be around longer for me, Kelly, and Mom. My dad, and if any of y'all that know me, or you see any of the posts, you'll understand that I struggle to love myself. I struggle to, God, I don't even like myself most of the time. Unfortunately, that's something that I have inherited from both of my parents. And my dad always had these beliefs that he was just this like awful person because he made mistakes when he was, when he was younger, and he, he did things that he wasn't proud of, and he thought he was a failure. Again, also something that I have inherited from him. Um, but I thought I was going to have more time to sit and talk with him and explain to him that, it wasn't like that. That you weren't a failure. I wouldn't have made it through the first walk without him. Like, my work ethic is what it is because I was on a concrete crew with him for 3 or 4 years, and he was harder on me than he was on any new person that started after me. Because he didn't want me to end, his quote was, he didn't ever wanted me to end up like him. But that morning about 9:45, I woke up and the internet had gone out, and I walked in the room, and my dad's laying there on the bed with his arm up. And if you know my dad, like, he always would be like, what are you doing? And my dad was incredibly technologically unsavvy. It was kind of like caveman smashing a rock on something. So I walk in and I fiddle with the Roku TV. I get it switched over to analog so he can watch some TV. And I turn around to walk out, and I'm like, "Hey, Pap," I was like, "Do you need anything else while I'm here? I'll grab you some ice chips, a popsicle." It's like, "Shoot, it's late enough now." It's like, "I'll go grab you a milkshake." Because at this point, the man is in hospice. If this man wants a milkshake, he's getting a milkshake. And he was like, "No, Bubba, I'm good. I appreciate you getting the TV working." And I was like, "I'm just next door." I was like, "If you don't feel like trying to raise your voice, shoot me a text." He's like, "Oh, I will, Bubba. I love you." And I was like, "I love you too, Pap." And I went in my room. I laid down to take a nap. And I don't know, about 10, 15 after 11, my mom and sister came in. And Kelly was obviously uh, panicked. And she said, "I think he's gone." And I walked in, and my dad was gone. And my sister did her crying right there. Um, After she was done, she and my mom walked out, and I sat there, and that was the first time that I cried. And I cried because, I wanted to talk to him, and we were told he was going to have 4 to 6 weeks, and there was so much stuff that I wanted to say to him, and I wanted him to know that I am who I am for the good, as well as what's wrong with me, as far as this inability to, like, love myself or like myself or take any credit for anything good I do or anything like that. I said, I was like, and I told him this. I was like, "Dad, I want you to know that I wouldn't have made it through that first walk if it wasn't for the toughness that I got from you. It's like, my work ethic came from you, you know like, I wouldn't be who I am, good and bad, without you." And it was at that moment, and I'm crying as I'm telling him this, but at that moment in that room, I felt a cold breeze go by me, and it went like right to left. I remember it. It went from right to left, and it wasn't the AC, because the AC was on my left side, and my dad had the air conditioner in there set to like 75 because he was only about 95, 96 pounds when he died, so he had trouble keeping warm. And I feel like that cold breeze was my dad saying, "Hey," he's like, "I hear you, I love you." It's like, "And I'll see you again." And you know, so Dad passed. A week later, we had the viewing, and I'm gonna give props to a few people out here or out there that, you know they're like brothers to me. Uh, to Chris Wolf, we have known each other for 30 years roughly of our lives, and he showed up, he and his wife, and his daughter, to Dad's viewing. Um, he didn't get a chance to swing by and pay respects to Dad when he was around, um, but he came to the viewing. My really good buddy Zach, who I drugged to Mount St. Joe's to wrestle with me after he graduated, he and his dad stopped by, which was awesome. I didn't get a chance because I was already on the road, to stop by when they had the celebration of life for his mom, who was an amazing woman as well. So Zach and Andy Trillo, thank you for coming out. David Fleck, he's like another brother of mine. He actually came in and prayed with my dad the day that he came home from hospice. Um, hoping to have uh, give dad the opportunity to ask forgiveness, and so he could hopefully end up in heaven. Um, and then last but not least, man, and this guy didn't even know my dad. He just came out of nowhere. He came, from Vandalia area where he lives now to be there for me. Uh, was Ben Bicknell, man. I want to give you a huge shout out. I'm actually kind of tearing up. I did not expect to do this. Um, again, Ben never knew my dad. I've known Ben for the last 10 years, between my time working for Meyer and working for FHI beforehand. And Ben has been super solid dude. He's one of those guys that I kind of wish I had like spent more time hanging out with, because I don't have a whole lot of people that I hang out with. Most of my friends have lives and stuff. So, but thank you guys for coming out to Dad's viewing and paying your respects and supporting me in that time. It meant more than y'all realize. Um, we got about 2 weeks later, week and a half later, we finally got Dad's ashes. I've got him in an Ohio State pendant. It's a Block O engraved. So he is with me for the rest of the walk and the rest of my life. But and there was a moment there. There was a moment where this wasn't going to happen, where I was on the verge of just being done with it. And the reason was, I sat there and I'm thinking about things. And my dad, he held on till I got home. He held on until our family was back together under one roof with nobody fighting for the first time in almost 40 years. But he died with his kids, his ex-wife, and current best friend around him. And for a brief second, is where I don't know if you would call it selfish. Maybe it's selfish, but I started thinking like, when I die, like I'm gonna die alone. Like I don't have kids. As of right now, I don't have a significant other. I obviously, if I did, I wouldn't be out on the road doing this. I was like, but I sat there. I was like, I'm gonna die alone. Like maybe I should cancel the walk and focus on like, building this normal life and trying to have something like that, so I don't die alone. Um, that feeling lasted, for a few hours, and I started thinking, like, my dad would beat the crap out of me if I quit this walk because he knew what it meant, and I know what it means. And there are a lot of people out there that even if this walk doesn't like hit every perfect chord with the mental health aspect, the fact that we're trying to put positivity out there and good things about mental health and share stories and uplift each other, like at the very least, if we're doing that. And my dad would have been so angry with me if I had quit the walk. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to get back on the road and we're going to go. So about a week ago Wednesday, took a Greyhound bus to Charleston and then took the local regional bus back to Clendenin and hit the road again. And first day, I want to give a huge shout out to a gentleman named Paul. I don't know that he'll even see this, but he actually held the cart in his shed for about a month while I was home to make sure everything was still safe and whatnot. I grabbed the cart, and I was Tyler, the gentleman I had talked about earlier. He picked the cart up and took it to a 4-H camp about 20 miles up the road that had given me permission to camp that night. So I just grabbed my day pack and I started hoofing it down the road. And there was a fairly large hill about halfway through my day. And start going up this hill. I mean, it's a pretty big climb. It's like 350 foot of elevation gain over like a mile. And there have been a few of these recently, and essentially like every town you have around here is down in a river, and we're still in Appalachian Mountains. So you're like, you go up a mountain and then you got to go back down by the river where these towns are. So you see this frequently. But as soon as I start walking up this hill, and I'm struggling on this day because didn't have breakfast. Again, I know it's hard to believe that a guy my size can have trouble eating, but it happens. I start climbing this hill, and I'm listening to my music like I always do, and the song "You'll Never Walk Alone" by Dropkick Murphys comes on. Obviously not the original version, uh, but it was a song. When you listen to it, the words mean a lot. And I actually had the Johnny Cash version played at my dad's viewing, which was fitting for what happens. But I'm going up the hill and I start looking around. You know, I've been in the Midwest long enough. I know what a summer thunderstorm is about to look like. So I have my day pack. I brought my rain jacket with me just in case. And as soon as it starts raining, I throw the rain jacket on because I had some sensitive stuff inside the pack. So I had to make sure that stayed dry. And the jacket goes on and it's like, he's that close, just that close from being able to zip up over everything and keep me somewhat dry, but it didn't happen. So this thunderstorm is just pounding, and so I keep the rain jacket on over the pack just to try to keep everything dry, um, and I am sloshing up the mountain, up the hill. Um, like it was like 8 or 9 miles into the day, maybe a little bit less. And there's a little mountain market that was at the top. The rain had stopped. It probably only lasted for about 20, 25 minutes, but I was soaked to the bone. I get in there. Luckily, in my pack, I had a change of socks. Didn't really matter because uh, when your shoes are soaked, doesn't matter how many dry pairs of socks you put on. And I didn't have the cart, so I couldn't switch into a dry pair of shoes. Um, and so I get that all through, and I get to the end of the day, and this bit of a squeamish stomach warning for you guys. Nothing really bad, but this is why you want to keep dry socks as much as you can. So I had those blisters that popped up uh, from just being in wet socks and having to walk in them because I didn't have any other choice. Um, or not wet socks, but wet shoes that in turn made my second pair of socks wet. Um, but I finally get to Camp Shepherd, a 4-H camp up the road. It's pretty much nighttime at this point. I spent about 2.5 hours at the mountain market, like trying to dry my shoes out, uh, trying to eat some food, get some calories to finish my day. Like I said, I get to Camp Shepherd, and the caretakers, Brad and Hillary Hickman, amazing people. They see me walking up, and they come swing by, and they come to the cart where we had parked it the night before, and they asked me, they were like, well, do you want to camp out under here? Or there's nobody in the cabins. Would you rather sleep inside? Yes, please. Get a shower? Oh, hell yeah. And they had some like leftover Pizza Hut and stuff from their dinner with their kids. So I got to have dinner, a shower, and a decent bed to sleep in. They turned on the AC. It got fairly cool in there, which was nice. They also transported my cart the next day from there, only about 10 miles, 9 to 10 miles to the Spencer / Roane County Fire Department. So again, I could just day pack, and it was only 10 miles. So I'm like, well, this ain't gonna be that bad. Um, yeah, I got that day. I'm like getting everything together, packing the cart, so when they come to get it, they can just load it up. And like it's just like storm after, like not even storms. It's like rain shower after rain shower, and I'm under a shelter at the right across from the cabin. And I'm just chilling. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna walk while it's raining. It finally stops. Everything clears up, and I start hoofing it again. Um, no breakfast. This is a common theme. I've got to figure out some way to have something that I can eat in the mornings because it kills me most of these days. I start walking, and again, remember this is only a 9 or 10 mile day. On most days, like especially with no cart, this should have been like 4 hours tops. It took me like 6.5 hours to go 10 miles. It sucked. It got to the point where like I messaged Brad and Hillary, and I was like, hey, they drove past me with a cart, and I was like, hey, if you guys come across the gas station, could you bring me like a Gatorade or like something. I was like, I'm struggling right now. I don't have any energy. So they brought me like a couple slices of pizza and a pepperoni roll, which is another thing that West Virginia is famous for. But they dropped the cart off. I chug 2 Gatorades. I eat the pizza, and I get a little bit of energy. I finish the walk. Um, I stopped at a little steakhouse in Spencer, again, trying to get some calories for the next day. Um, the Route 33 Steakhouse, really good food. Service was nice. Apparently, it's a fairly new place, but it gets the two thumbs up. Um, Next morning, like I wanted to get started early before the heat hits, and I do the usual Joe Hall thing where I end up like wandering around in circles, like chasing butterflies. I went to Tudor's for breakfast, and like in my head, like I'm doing the math of where I'm going. I think that day was only going to be 14 miles to Arnoldsburg. The community center in Arnoldsburg, West Virginia, said you can throw your tent up here. So I was like, cool, it's only 14 miles. That's, I keep doing the math in my head and justifying, well, when I'm backing it up, it's only going to take this and this and this. So, I get my breakfast. I buy a few things for my cart for snacks or whatever for the day. Um, they grab, or for my pack, not my cart, sorry, because Brad and Hillary grabbed the cart and took it up to Arnoldsburg. Couple of big hills again, a couple of hills that were like 250 300 foot of elevation gain, and even without a cart that can still be rough. So again, kind of dragging. I get to Arnoldsburg. They connected me with Judy and Carl Brannon, who are firefighters and EMTs from Grantsville, where I would go the next day. They were actually on duty in the squad, but they weren't on a call, so they actually brought me some dinner. They brought me some spaghetti and stuff, and um, I got ready the next day. And I think from then it was about, I don't know, 16 miles to get to Grantsville. But that morning I get up, and man, this is like typical. This is like some more Joe Hall, like fat dude stuff. So I get up that morning and I'm trying to eat something for breakfast. So I got these bagels or whatever, and I open the bagels and I'm eating my bagel, and and I'm waiting for the fog to clear, because that's one of the bigger things too. Is like you're in West Virginia, you're in the Appalachian Mountains. These are a lot of hilly roads, turns, curves. Um, I don't need to add fog to the list of reasons why I got hit by a car. So I'm sitting there and I'm eating my bagel, and I'm like, man, this tastes funny. But I finish the bagel, whatever, have a couple, have a Gatorade or whatnot. I start going up the road. I stopped at a place called uh, it was like Christian Faith Donuts or Filled with Faith Donuts or something like that. Where there was a nice older gentleman, Charlie, who was very polite about calling me a fatty fat pants. He was like, "Oh man, how's a guy doing as much walking as you do still be as big as you are?" And I was like, "You should have seen me when I started this walk." Um, a little bit further up, there was a gas station, so I stopped in to grab like something with caffeine, give me a little bit of energy for the morning. And a couple of gentlemen there were talking, and they were, like, "Hey, did I see you on such and such road the other day?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." So, we talked about what I was doing. I grabbed my monsters, and I'm drinking my monster, eating these donuts, and I get going, and I get to Grantsville. It took most of the day. I was getting, and again, it was like I said, I think it was about 16 miles. It might have been 19. A couple of big hills to climb. Um, the first, actually, no, there was one really big hill, and this one wiped me out. This one was like 350 feet of elevation gain in a half mile, and it probably took me an hour to go that half mile to get to the top of that hill. And I get to the top of the hill, and I pull my chair out, and the thing that made me the maddest about it was I got to the top of the hill, and all that effort, and I still didn't get a view. But I pull my chair out, and I'm like drinking water and drinking Gatorade, and like just trying to rest my legs, because my quads were burning pushing the cart and everything up that hill. And I stood up, get ready to finish my last, I don't know, 8 or 9 miles to get to Grantsville Fire Department. And as soon as I stood up, I heard the rumble of doom. It was like, and it rushed me faster than anything I have experienced. And I'm sitting there like, there's no options. There are no options. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, So I get to this point where I go, okay, I start listening from when I can hear cars coming each direction to when I see them. So I can time this out. Let's just say the answer of does a bear poop in the woods has been answered. Yes. The scariest part about all that was as soon as I was done, I start pushing the car and let me tell you, I was about a mile up the road, not even a mile, maybe like a quarter mile. And I was hurting, like I not hurting, but like I was tired. That it depleted me. But I see the state highway patrolman like comes up, pulls up in front of me, and I'm like, oh my god, did somebody see me in the woods? And he was like, he got out and he goes, hey, have you seen a kid? Or he's like, did you call 911? And I'm like, nope, I was just listening to music. He's like, did you see a kid running around? And I was like, nope. He's like, all right, thank you. And he radioed in. They're like, hey, there's a guy walking, but it's not the kid we're looking for. And then immediately after he goes by, there's another state boy. It's like full on lights and sirens blowing by me. I was like holding the card. I'm like, God, I thought I was gonna get in trouble. Um, I go about 3 miles, get to a gas station, do the usual, get some Gatorade, sit down for a second. I get to Grantsville Fire Department. The fire department cooks hamburgers. Again, real food. I'm in. I'm all the way in. They cooked a bunch of hamburgers. All the firefighters were there. They gave me a spot to camp, which was nice. Uh, had the cart inside. I think that night I ate like 3.5 hamburgers and some sides or whatnot, but chugged a bunch of Gatorade and some water. Uh, the next day, well, I had the stomach issues, but like I woke up and I think my walk for the next day was about 20 miles, and I was like, I don't know if I want to push this, feeling like I do. So they said, yeah, you can camp here again. But I started going through my cart, and I couldn't figure out why I got sick the day before until I started digging through, and I grabbed my bag of bagels, and when I spun the bag around, uh, the bagels were full of mold. So somehow the night before, tired, or the day before, tired in the morning, just trying to eat something for breakfast, I ate a moldy bagel. If that is not like the most fat guy thing you've ever heard in your life, that I did not see the mold on the bagel, still ate the entire bagel, and then vacated my innards in the woods on the side of a highway, the stories write themselves here, folks. But I I rearrange the cart, get rid of some stuff I don't need, which is something I tend to do anytime I get a shorter day or a couple of days off. It's always about like, what is there something in here that I don't need, something I can get rid of to lighten the load a little bit. But got started the next day. I went to a little place called Mom's Place in Grantsville, had some breakfast, and started going about 19 miles. This was a couple of days ago to get here in Glenville. We had permission from the Gilmer County Fire Department to camp, and things were going okay. I walked past I went into the one gas station like on the road I was on going out of town. I go in, and in my head, I'm like, you got about 2.5 liters of water out on your cart. You need to get some more waters, because I was trying to cut back on Gatorade too, because I thought that maybe all the sugar in the Gatorade could have been what was causing the stomach issues. And really, our money situation on the walk isn't great, so it's going to have to be water, mostly water for now. Um, but I go in there and I grab some pretzels. It's like, something easy to snack on or whatever. Completely forget to get any liquids. So like I have two of these big hills to climb again on this day. Not as big as the other ones, but actually this one might only been one. It was just a really long one. Um, and it just, I got to the top of the hill, sat down, took a break. I got about 9 miles into this 19-mile journey, and I'm out of water. And anybody that knows me knows it's hard to ask for help. It's almost impossible. I never do it. If someone offers help, I will take it. But it's a struggle for me to be like, hey, person, I need some help. So like I am parched. My throat's or my mouth's starting to get dry, so I know I'm dehydrated. And the one thing that you don't realize either, and it didn't even dawn on me until I was talking to the people at the Grantsville Fire Department, is it's like 30 to 40 degrees warmer on the blacktop where I'm walking. So like on these hotter days, the way it had been for a few days, like it was 130 degrees on that blacktop. So I was like, oh, it's way worse than 85, you know. Um, there's a gentleman sitting outside, and he's reading a book or reading the newspaper, and I take my cart from the left side of the road over to like his driveway, and I say a couple times, I'm like, excuse me," and he didn't hear me, and I finally got close, and I was worried because he was an older gentleman, and I didn't want to like scare him. And really, I mean, we're in Appalachia. I don't know who's carrying. I don't want to scare someone and they accidentally shoot me. But he looks up and he kind of is frightened a little bit. And I was like, hey, I was like, I'm just wondering, would it be all right if I fill up my water jug? And he was like, absolutely, come on in. So we get in and start talking. He fills it up from the fridge, the water line in the fridge, and he's a Desert Storm veteran, so I thanked him for his service. And we get to talking, and his wife comes out. This is the Mini family. She was Mary, and because I am so terrible with names, I forgot his name. Really nice people though, and it makes me feel like a giant piece of crap because I forgot his name. Um, but they gave me like a cooler to put ice and water in, and they filled up the water jug, and we're talking about my dad passing. We're talking about mental health and how Mary's sister or sister-in-law had tried to take her own life not very long ago. Um, and they we talked about faith, and they told me how they appreciated what I was doing, trying to raise awareness and bring attention to this. Filled all the waters up, and like I was like, things are looking up, man. Like I have some water to drink now. She also gave me some Pop Tarts. She's like, I love Pop Tarts, and I was like, funny you should say that because that's about the only thing that ends up getting carried on my cart. I still don't frequently eat them because when it's hot and I'm dehydrated and my mouth is dry, I don't want to eat a Pop Tart, but sometimes they're delicious. So yeah, at this point, like I said, I had about 8, 9 miles left to go, but I'm feeling good because I got water now. The curveballs, guys, the curveballs. I got about a mile and a half up the road and I start looking around. And before this, I look at WeatherBug all the time. I always want to know what the weather's going to do to plan my day. 0% chance of rain all day. All right. Yeah. Zero. 0% chance. Saw it clouding up and I was like, well, this is weird. And where I was at, there was not great cell phone signal. So I couldn't pull up the radar. This terrible thunderstorm rolls in. Luckily, like I had the tarp and everything, and again, I've been in the Midwest in summertime. You can tell what it looks like when storms are going to come in. So like I cover the cart, I put my rain jacket on, and it just absolutely opens up. It dumps rain, lightning, thunder for like 3.5 hours. I walked like a mile and a half, 2 miles up the road, uh, and I found a building, uh, which was like a greenhouse. Had an awning out front, so I pushed the cart as close as I could get. The awning couldn't fit us both in, so the cart had a tarp. I got under there, and I'm just waiting and waiting. And like I knew the fire department was. I told them I'd be there by 8, but I'm like, it was 5:30 at this point, and I still had about 6.3 miles to go. And I'm just sitting here like, guys, you've got to be kidding me. It starts to lighten up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do this. And like a couple of guys that worked at the greenhouse, they pulled around in the truck and they were like, do you want us to give you a ride? And let me tell you guys, I was so close to taking that ride. You know, it's a thunderstorm. And these roads are tight. Like it's sketchy enough when the roads are dry. But like in the middle of this thunderstorm and the rain's just coming down torrentially, like I'm sure people would have been like, oh, I understand it. It's okay that you took the ride. And it necessarily would not have violated my no ride rule because weather emergencies and injuries were the only, or my personal only reasons to ever take a vehicle to go towards an objective. I didn't take the ride. Pat myself on the back. I didn't take the ride. Um, I should have taken the ride. I should have, guys. Uh, I got to start going, and yeah, it was terrible. torrential downpour. I had been in contact with the assistant fire chief at Gilmer, and he was like, well, I'm running on the EMS squad tonight. They actually drove past me at one point. He's like, if I'm not at the station, here's somebody's number. We'll get somebody in there to take care of you, let you get in, get a shower or whatever. With about 2 or 3 miles left to go, all the rain clears up. Again, I'm already soaked through my feet again. This is perfect. And I can feel new blisters forming just after I finish drying out the old blisters. But these are on the other foot. But I get into Grantsville. I get in contact with the fire department, or Glenville, excuse me. Get in contact with one of the firefighters. He goes to the Pizza Hut in town. Like, I ordered myself some pizza. He brings it to me. I grabbed this Airbnb for a couple of nights because we were supposed to get thunderstorms today. And I was like, you know what? I'm not walking through thunderstorms like 2 out of 3 days. Like, I'm not doing it. And pushing through the storm the other night, there was somebody that didn't swerve fast enough to get it to, or I thought they weren't going to swerve fast enough. So I went to like push the car off the side of the road. And when I pushed my right foot, it hit the white stripe on the side of the road and kind of slipped out from under me. My hip flexor did what my hip flexor does and went snap, crackle, pop. So I took a day off yesterday to kind of rest that. And I knew it was going to storm today, so I took today off. And then it ended up not storming because that's what happens when I do this. I try to err on the side of caution, and I err on the side of wasting a day. But here we are tomorrow. The goal is to get to Weston, Virginia. It's about 27.7 miles. So as soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to hit the sack. I'm going to throw my clothes in the dryer. I'm going to hit the sack, get up as early as I can. Hopefully there's not a ton of fog because I want to wait till the fog lifts a little bit before I start going. But the fact that I have to go 28 miles to get to the fire department tomorrow, I'll probably have to get going fairly early. But again, I want to say thank you guys for the 3 or 4 of you that watch this live. To anybody that watches it after the fact, guys, I still appreciate it. I know Friday night is not the best time to try to do a live podcast, but it is what it is. I can only do these when I get decent. I got Wi-Fi here, but I got to have Wi-Fi or really good cell signal. Going to try to get back into the habit of like at least doing these once a week. Definitely recapping each state, but try to do one of these once a week. Just for the people that don't follow along on any of the social medias, so they can still kind of keep track of what we're doing and the general goings on in the humorous life of Joe, who's walking across the country. But as we wrap this up, I wanted to, my mom had sent me some pictures in a little video today, and I had added some to them, and it's a little memorial for my dad here at the end. But before we get to that, I just want you guys to know that if you or anybody else that is struggling, dial 988. Reach out. Okay, there is help out there. And if you don't feel comfortable talking to 988, find me on Facebook. I'll talk to you. Again, I'm not certified to give you any advice, but I will talk to you. I'll listen. I'll do whatever I can for you. But you're not alone when you're struggling, and you don't have to think that it's always going to be this way. So take care, guys. I love you guys. And also, again, I've mentioned this quite a few times on the Facebook page. If you out there, if you know anybody that you think would be interested in helping sponsor Haul Across the Country and helping us to continue this mission, please reach out to me. All right. I've got information that I can give to people. We're also looking for public speaking engagements to try to get the message out there. Again, they can reach out through the website, through the Facebook page, Carrier Pigeon. They can flag me down on the side of the road. I don't have a problem if we have to turn the cart into a NASCAR and strap it up with sponsors. Whatever it takes to get this walk done, we're going to do. But take care of yourselves, take care of your friends and your family, and go take care of a stranger. But as we wrap this up, I just want to do one more thing, just to kind of say I love you to my dad.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sweet silver song of a life.